Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I've got a very special guest in Kairos here with me today. Hi, how are you?
Great, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Um, I think we're going to start off by just recapping last week's main event. Obviously, I think everyone would be lying if they thought that we would get the result that we got last week in Derek Lewis just wiping out Curtis Blades. Um, I think Curtis Blade's game plan was a bit questionable. Like, you didn't really see him go for any takedowns that he wanted to be on the feet with him because he has got stoppage over JDS. So whether that gave him confidence to strike with Derek Lewis, I'm not too sure. But what were your opinions on that fight?
I thought that at first I was just like, maybe he just has something to prove, but I think in his mind he was thinking, I'm trying to set up this takedown. I don't want to throw it nakedly and get caught like what ended up happening. So I think he was like, all right, I'm gonna lull him to sleep with a little bit of the striking because Derek doesn't just come out aggressive. So he probably thought he was safe. And for the most part, he was up until he wasn't. So maybe it was a question to him just trying to wear him down mentally and then taking the shot, or maybe it was just everyone calling him out for doing what it takes to win, and that finally just got to him. He's like, nah, fuck this, I'm gonna stand up and strike with him, like on some ego type of shit. So hopefully it wasn't that. Hopefully he stuck to his, actually, you know what, I hope that he let the fans get to him so that he can say in the back of his mind, well, if I fight my fight the next time, I'll win, versus him just saying, yeah. So hopefully though, we'll see. I don't know.
And last week I kind of said that Derek Lewis is one of those guys that is good, but he's also not very good in terms of. I mean, if you look at that fight, he had 27. Curtis Blades had 27 significant strikes to 3 before that uppercut. Like, he would just wait for until he lands that punch. And if he doesn't land that punch, he's in kind of big trouble. Do you see him causing any troubles to like the top 3 in that heavyweight division? Like, how do you see him doing?
I think Derek Lewis is a very special case because it's like conventional knowledge does not work with him. This when you think of stuff, it's like, oh well, if he takes him down, or oh, if he controls him, oh, if he that's all these things are things that people have tried. And the only person who has successfully wrestled Derek Lewis is DC. And DC is an Olympic wrestler. So I just it's very hard for me to deny Derek, especially because he's been taking things more seriously. He doesn't just train for 30 minutes a day anymore. Like he has all these things going in his favor. He looks better now. I think he can crack the top 3, and I think that he can compete for a title. Like they better not give him Alistair Overeem because no, they just don't. And then they better not he has to wait though at this point. If I was him, I would wait. And if I was Alistair, I would not take that fight. But as far as I'm concerned, I think that if he were to fight Ngannou, or if he were to fight Stipe, or if he were to fight John, I like his chances. I think that there's a woman who said that she thinks that Derek hits harder than Francis. And when she first said that, I was just like, I don't know. But looking back at it, she might be right. Because first of all, Derek didn't even follow through with that uppercut. It stopped short and hit him and he was dead. We've seen Ngannou hit people to death, but sometimes it doesn't always go down like that. So plus Derek is using technique, and I think Ngannou is just winging them boys. So I like his chances. I like Derek's chances.
And Blades didn't really get KO like that against Ngannou, did he? So it was like this was like a flat out. So I think that is a good argument. I think also in this heavyweight division on last week's card, it was kind of like the passing of the new guard, kind of with Chris Dalkaus and Tom Aspinall getting wins over obviously legends in Olenek and Andrei Arlovsky. What were your thoughts on them two and their chances in the top 15 in the future?
It's tricky with the Arlovsky situation because it's like, okay, yeah, you just beat Tanner just a fight ago, but let's not act like you weren't out of your prime and like all these other factors. And the same thing with Olenek. It's like you guys have had great careers, but you have to take that with a grain of salt, just like winning against Anderson Silva at this stage, just like winning against certain people. Like you could say that about, win against Jose Aldo right now. That's big. That's big. Absolutely. You have a win over TJ Dillashaw right now. That's phenomenal. But wins over those guys, I can't really say. And although it is the heavyweight division and basically it's pretty weak, I still don't want to go off on this guy can win a world title. Why aren't you guys hyping him up? I'm gonna hold my tongue. Get 2 or 3 more wins and then I'll make up my mind.
I think I'm the same as well, but also we have seen Olenek and Orlovsky beat these younger contenders, like I said, Bosa, Felipe Lins. I mean, they're still winning, and Dalkaus and Aspinall were able to get the job done. Who would you say has got the biggest ceiling, or is it too early for you to say yet?
Yeah, I'm not gonna. The thing about the heavyweight division too is just like it can be deceiving. The ceiling for someone might look very large just because they're always knocking someone out, but then they go against someone and they can't utilize those tools, and we find out their ceiling isn't that great. Or you like so. I'm gonna say they both have low ceilings in the top of my mind, just based off of what I saw last weekend, not based off of what I've seen prior or where I expect them to go. I don't want to. I don't like doing that with saying, oh well, based off of this fight here last week, you can, because we seen it. We see Julian Erosa last weekend put on a phenomenal performance. But you look back through Julian's previous fights, he's there and he's not. He shows up and he doesn't. Like so, it's hard to base it off of that. I need a larger sample size.
Yeah, and also, like, I was Aspinall's first opponent as a heavyweight in the UFC. Like, he fought Jake Collier, who's a middleweight, really, and he fought Alan Bordeaux, who was a light heavy, and he didn't fight a heavyweight that's in his prime, so it'll be interesting to see what he does next. Same with Dalkaus. Now, moving on to this week's card. It's a very good card with a lot of really good prospects and a very good main event, which is Gane versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik, which is a very good fight. First fight of the night is Justin Jacoby versus Maxim Grishin. This is Justin Jacoby's second fight since re-entering in the UFC. He looked good against Justin Leday, but that is Justin Leday. There's not much we can take from that, but he still looked very good. And Maxim Grishin he was a massive prospect in PFL, won quite a lot of fights in the PFL, but then he hasn't looked great since joining the UFC, in my opinion. Yes, he fought Tabora, who's a very good fighter himself, but I don't think he looked that good against Gazi Morad and Tigilov either. But I think just Jacoby will win. I think he will grind him out. I think he could get the late stoppage. How do you see it going?
I think I have it the opposite. I'm picking Grishin just because like there's a certain level of experience that I always look for in certain people, and I look at that compared to their age. And so Grishin has the experience of basically a 40-year-old who's in the heavyweight division who's been fighting since the pride and the dream days. The guy has almost like 40, 50 fights. It's going to be hard for me to pick against somebody like that, especially against like an unknown commodity like Jacoby for me. And yes, sure, he can grind about and he could possibly get a finish in the end, but it's like, what happens if you set a pace for yourself that you can't maintain for those 3 rounds? And you see that happening for a lot of these grinder types and a lot of these younger fighters because it takes them a while for them to realize just the extent of what they can put out there and maintain it for the remainder of the fight. And I think that Grishin is going to take advantage of that. He might even get it done earlier, but I think that as the fight goes on, Grishin's going to get more and more momentum behind him, and you're just going to see experience is real. People can act like experience doesn't matter, but experience is very real, and that's the reason why we saw Macy Barber get straight up teed off on by Grasso. That's the reason why we see all these young prospects who are like, I'm gonna be 20-0, I'm gonna be champion, the youngest champion. That shit don't happen because it doesn't work that way. It doesn't. You have to learn. And this is his chance to learn.
Yeah, and like this weekend in the boxing, a guy called Josh Kelly got stopped against a guy called David Ivanizan, who's a very good boxer. And it goes to the point where like the experience was important because he's been matched up against higher level opponents, while the prospect over here, he didn't. So that's a very good point. But Justin Jacoby's also got experience, but it's in like kickboxing. So he's got fight experience, but I mean, Grishin's almost had, I think he's had exactly 40 fights. I think he's had 31, 8 and 2. He might be have a tiny bit more.
Yeah.
But do you think that the UFC might have got to him a bit too late? Because he is 36 now. Like, he might be past his prime.
It depends. Certain people can be the exception. Like I said, like Jose Aldo's 34 right now. TJ Dillasaw's older than Jose Aldo. You got like fighters like that are successful. Everyone's different. Yoel Romero's 92 years old and he was able to compete for so everyone's different. I don't like giving that sort of hard stop rule for people. So But yeah, he's getting up there. I think now. Same with there's this guy in the featherweight division. I forget his name right now. It's he just signed to fight Dan Ige on short notice. But he's
Gavin
a
Tucker.
yes, Gavin Tucker is up there in age. He's got to make a move right now. The clock is ticking, but that doesn't negate his ability. So that's why it's hard for me to, it's not like he's 40. So I still like Christian's chances even with his age.
Yeah, I think it's a very good fight. On to the next fight is Ronnie Lawrence versus Vince Cachero. I don't know too much about them. I know Lawrence had a good performance on the Dana White Contender Series. That was like the first time I've seen him fight. He looked decent. I think he took that fight on short notice as well. And again, with Cachero, I'm not too sure about, but I think he's from Hawaii, which they've had a very good start to the year with Soriano, Holloway. I think I'm forgetting another guy as well. But they've had a good start to the year. He lost to Jamal Emmers, who was meant to fight last week, but unfortunately he had back spasms, which was unable for him to fight against Chas Skelly. I think I'm going to go with Lawrence. I just like his record more. He's 6-1. I think he's just got more better record for me to go. But I really don't know much about these two. So
yeah,
do you know much about these two?
No, the extent of the knowledge with Lawrence is all I know about is the Contender Series. Exactly. So that's why I was just like, Lawrence. I usually do my research for fights probably like 2 or 3 days before the events because I'm doing a lot of stuff, but I should have been more prepared. I'm going with Lawrence. He's the known commodity, bro. Like,
mm-hmm. Yeah. Next fight is between Lorenzo Mennefield and William Knight. I was really tough on Mennefield against Devin Clark because I picked him to win, and he looked very good in those first 3 minutes. And then I think as a professional athlete, you shouldn't be gassing after 3 minutes. I feel like, especially against someone like a Devin Clark who will get you against the cage, and that's tiring enough. And he was just able to do that. And then against OSP, he just didn't look very good. And I feel like his confidence might be shot. And William Knight's coming off decent wins over Alexa Kamor. Even though he might be quite green himself, he was only 24, I think, when he beat him. But, I mean, he fought Tafon Chukwi, who was a monster in that division. He lost as his only loss, but I think I'm just going to go with Knight here. I think he's just a stronger guy, and I think he's got quite brutal elbows as well. I think when we saw Kamir try getting him against the cage, I think Knight was able to put him some nice elbows in. So I think he'll win by unanimous decision. Who do you think about this fight?
I can't pick against Alonzo Mennefield. I'm sorry, bro. I know like he hasn't looked in for. I gotta ride with him. I'm loyal. I believe in his ability to turn it around. And yeah, he's had a tough string of like 2 to 3 fights, but I think he rectifies it here. And I think he might even finish him. I think he's gonna finish him. In fact, probably like I think he comes out there and just rolls over him. I think he's just like, I don't care about getting knocked out. I don't care about losing anymore. He just goes out there reckless and not reckless, but aggressive and takes him out in round 1. That's what I think.
I think they're around about the similar age as well, so it's not like it's young prospect against young prospect. Yep. If they're going to make a move, they're going to have to do it now, sort of. I know in the light heavyweight you can be a bit older. I mean, look at Glover. He might be getting a title shot very soon at the age of 40, but
yeah,
whether these two are going to be ranked guys, I'm not too sure, but it should be a very fun fight. And it's always good that we have different opinions, or it will be quite boring, so it's good that we both disagree and stuff. Next fight is between a flyweight veteran in Alexa Davis, but fighting Sabina Marzo. But I think this fight's at bantamweight, which doesn't really suit either girls. I don't think. I'm not too sure about Davis, so I might be talking a bit wrong here. She might have actually fought at bantam before.
Yes, she did for a few years actually. She fought at bantamweight for about 3 years or so, but then she had losses to like Jessica I, Leslie Smith, and a few other fighters, and then she dropped down to flyweight.
Oh, okay, so it does. So it does suit Alexa Davis then.
Yeah.
Over Marzo. I think Marzo's kind of a weird one because I think against Justine Kish, that was quite a competitive fight from what I remember. I think Sabina Marzo struggled kind of in the fight, and then she got the stoppage in round 3. She's got a nasty head kick. I saw one of the LFA events last week, and her highlight package popped up, and she's got a lot of really good head kick KOs over there. I'm going to go with Marzo just because she's the younger prospect here, but Davis has got a lot of mileage. She's 19-10, which is a very experienced record. to have, and she's fought very good opponents in Ronda Rousey, Jessica Rai. Obviously, these girls have been world champions and fought for world titles. I just think Marzo's fought more consistently. Recently, Davis, I think, has had a bit of a layoff. That might come into things a bit. How do you see it going?
I'm picking Alexis Davis. I like Sabina Mazo, and she's I'm actually making a video and she's in it in the up and coming days, but like she's just so young and green. Like this, she's like 24 years old, and like you see the style of fighters that she's getting those knockouts on. Like, where are those people now? I will just leave it at that. I'm not gonna disrespect anyone, but like, and then you look at who she fought JJ Aldrich, which was a tough fight, and it went to, I think, a split decision. And JJ Aldrich is an incredible fighter, but she had a lot of size, she had a lot of reach, she had a lot of weight on her. She had the advantage, and JJ Aldrich wasn't even like grappling that much with her. She had a tough contested fight against people who she should have been wiping the floor with, but she wasn't doing what she's supposed to do. Alexis Davis, no matter who she's going up against, is going to push it on. When she was fighting Viviana Araújo, Viviana won that fight, but Alexis Davis was pushing the action the entire time. When she was fighting Jessica Eye, the same story. She can push forward and fight these tough style fights and grimy and gritty ones, and she can grapple too. It's just a lot of the time she doesn't get the chance to. I think she's grappling Sabina, and I don't think Sabina can win this one. As much as I want to see Sabina be successful and I want to see her win, I don't think this is the fight they should have put together for her up a weight class against someone who's fought at that weight class, against a person who has a lot more experience than her and who's been around and fought. Like, it's just way too many things going against her in this fight for me to, in good conscience, say Sabina Mazo for the win. I just,
And it's also interesting how you say about, like, look at where the opponents are now. Like, I mean, look at Araujo now. She's won 2 in a row, I think. She's about to fight Caitlin Chookagian, and that's Davis's last loss compared to Justin Kish, who lost her last. Oh no, her last fight was to Marzo, but she's not going to be somebody that's ranked, I don't think, in that division. And then JJ Aldrich, I think, might be cut. I'm not too sure what her situation is in the UFC at the moment. But I mean, there's no doubt Davis has fought the better opponents. I just normally like going for the prospects just because I want to see new stars. I feel like this is like we saw last week. Maybe it could be a chance of like the old guard passing it on to the new guard, or it just could be Davis being too much of a veteran and and just getting a decision win over her. Next fight is a very good fight. I think it's been it's a new opponent for Alex Oliveira in Ramazan Kurmagomedov, who's an undefeated fighter from Russia, who's 8-0. And not know too much about Ramazan. Obviously, Alex Oliveira's been very fun fights. Coming off a tough loss to Shafkat Rakhmonov, which is no shame in that Rakhmonov is a very good fighter. I don't really like Oliveira if the things he's done is true, but
yeah,
I think he's another guy where he's got all the experience in the world, but again, it's whether what his confidence is like, what his momentum's like, and that fight against Shansi, he took a lot of damage, and I know that was a few years back now, but that gradually just tolls against a guy who's 8-0 in Ramzan Kurmagomedov, who I think fought on the Contender Series at one point against Jordan Williams. I think Dana fought Jordan Williams, won that fight, and then Jordan Williams got another chance at the Contender Series. I would say that's his best win. No, his best win's against a guy called Georgi Valentinov, who was 18-4 when he was 3-0. So I mean that's very impressive that a guy who's 3-0 is beating a guy at 18-4. I think I'm going to go with Kurmagomedov here by sub. How do you see it going?
I'm picking him too. I'm gonna pick Kamak. This is the first and last time we agree for the rest of this episode. This is like I was thinking about Oliveira and I was like, well, this guy's incredibly fast. No, you know what? No, we ain't agreeing. I'm picking Oliveira. What are you? No, I'm picking Oliveira. I'm not agreeing with you no more. I think that Oliveira is one of those fighters who's pretty mobile and agile, and they have that like the best way to describe it is like quick twitch fiber. Like there's everything that they do is at 100% speed, and it's very hard for people to get a cadence on that thing. And the thing about this one is it's 3 rounds. Oliveira has fought in 5 rounders. He's fought some gritty and tough people this entire time. He's shown he can maintain that output against those people. So it's gonna be hard to knock me off of my position with picking Oliveira in this one. I'm sorry, man. You're out in the cold again. On your own show. On your own show, I'm going against you.
Yeah, I just really like a win against a 3-0 guy beating a guy who's 18-4. I think that's very impressive, and I feel like a win over Jordan Williams is good as well. I'm the European. I normally go with the Europeans against the rest of the world kind of opponents. So, and like I said, I don't like Alex Oliveira, so it's a bit of bias here. But the next fight is a very good fight. Is Alexander Hernandez versus Thiago Moises. We're probably going to disagree on this as well. I thought Thiago Moises did beat Bobby Green, and I know a lot of people felt like he didn't. And you can tell by his face straight away he disagrees with that. I just felt like the way I thought Moises was just hitting with the harder punches. I know Green was hitting with the better volume, but I think the way I interpret the significant strike is the damage, right? In terms of, and I don't think any of those punches really hurt Moises. Like he was just able to walk through them. I just felt like he had them better shots in that fight. Who did you think won that fight? By your face, I'm assuming you thought Bobby Green won.
I feel like I'm biased though in this situation because one, I'm a massive Bobby Green fan. Like I have been watching that man for so long. So going into it, I was picking Bobby Green. Watching it, I wanted Bobby Green to win. And when he did win, I didn't objectively go back and watch the fight just because I wanted that gratification. I didn't want to like look back and be like, so I just let it rock. I think Moises is a strong pick for this one. Simply because looking at the Alex Hernandez, who took it to Beneil Dariush, although like you could say that was a little bit of a dirty trick, fake glove touch, and then like you could say it was dirty. That Alex Hernandez has not reared his face ever again after the Cowboy fight, and that's one of those things in the fight game where it's just like if this version of this fighter was fighting right now, they would be able to take it. Well, they aren't. That person's gone forever. They're not coming back. Like so, I'm picking Thiago, and if Alex Hernandez does not get his killer instinct back and he manages to win this fight, it's only going to get worse for him because he keeps getting handed tougher and tougher opponents. So then eventually he's going to get humbled again. You got to either rebuild yourself up opponent by opponent or step away. And I think Alex Hernandez didn't do a good enough job at stepping away. Like he came back against Trinaldo and he lost that fight, I think. I think he flat out lost that fight. He came back against, I forget who else it was, and I was just like, I think it was Drew Dober.
Yes. I think it was. Yeah.
And then he got TKO'd, and I was just like, it might have been a vicious KO. And I was just like, I think the Alex Hernandez that we were all expecting to take 155 by storm might not ever exist again. And that's unfortunate. So I'm picking Thiago. I think Thiago I don't think he's going to finish Alex. I think he's going to keep it safe. But I think he's going to win 30-27, maybe 30-26.
And also, Thiago's got a very underrated resume. He's fought really good guys in his career, very good record. And I do rate a win over Bobby Green more than a win over Chris Grumacher, who was Hernandez's last win. I'm rooting for Moises to win, but I did predict that Hernandez would win by late TKO, but I don't want him to. I do want Moises to win, and I think if Moises was going to win, he could get a quick sub because you know how quick these BJJ guys can change situation. So I think it's a fight that should be on the main card. I feel like being the main event of the prelims is very good because normally people catch in to see one prelim fight, and I mean this is a very good prelim fight to go and watch. Now on to the start of the main card between Alex Caceres versus Kevin Crew. Both of these two don't really have the best of records, but I mean, I like Alex Caceres a lot. I think he's a very fun fighter, and I think he's turned his career around a bit. Over wins over Steven Peterson, Chase Hooper, and Austin Springer, who beat Giga Shikadze on the Dana White Contender Series. And I mean, he had a close fight against Yair Rodriguez as well. He lost by split decision. So I mean, and he's been doing it for 10 years now in the UFC. I feel like he's put in better opposition to Kevin Croom. I know he beat Kevin Croom beat Roosevelt Roberts, which is now a non-contest because I think Croom got tested to weed, which a lot of people disagree with it being no contest. It's a bit unfair. It's a bit like the Trevin Jones situation with Timur Valiev as well. Like, it's not that much of an enhancing drug. I don't think. But I think I'm going to go with Caceres. I just think he's a better fighter. I think he's remained active, which is very important for him as well. And he's not that old. He's only 32 years old, I feel. I think that's the same age as Kroom. How do you see this fight going?
I'm picking Caceres, and I'm glad you brought up that point, though, earlier. Alex Caceres is just like Angela Hill, who we're about to talk about. Their records are not indicative of their ability as a fighter. Like, they have been in some very tough, contested fights, some fights that could go either way, or they're facing opponents. Like, how many people go to a decision against Yair? And that was a 5-rounder. That was a 5-rounder against Yair. Like, Caceres, Angela Hill, Jeremy Stephens, there's some fighters who have records that are just like, they're better than that. You can't look at that record and think that they're that. Like, that's why when they put Alex Caceres against Chase Hooper, people are like, Chase Hooper submits him. But look at, I'm just like, are you crazy? Are you crazy? Like, that's why I'm looking at this fight with a side eye too. I'm just like, I think Caceres goes out there and mixes it up on this man. By mixed up, I just think he outstrikes him for 15 straight minutes. I'm going Caceres. I think it goes 29-28.
Yeah, I think he can get a decision as well. And on to the next fight that we mentioned, Angela Hill versus Ashley Yoder. I mean, these are two fighters that maybe their record doesn't really match up to their skill set, because Yoder's had a very close fight, so she could have gone her way as well. She's 8-6, and Angela Hill arguably beat Michelle Waterson and Claudia Cadena. She definitely beat Claudia Cadena, in my opinion. I think that was one of the worst decisions. Was that on the what card was that on? I want to say that was on the Volk Holloway card, but I don't think it was.
You know, I thought it was a lot longer ago than that. I could be wrong though.
I'll check now. But what are your thoughts on this fight?
I'm picking Angela Hill, and I think she runs through Ashley Yoder. This was they shouldn't have done this fight. I know what they're trying to do. It's like, well, one of them got to get a win now. Like, I feel like that's that type of fight they tried to put on. And unfortunately, they should have never put Yoder against Angela Hill, because I think that Angela Hill legitimately is like a top 5 fighter, probably top 7, definitely top 7, But I don't think Ashley Yoder is a top 7 fighter. I don't necessarily think that she might be a top 10 fighter, if we're being honest, not to be disrespectful to her. But I think that Angela Hill, I think she's going to finish her. I think she finishes her in the 2nd round. And I think it's going to be TKO with like ground and pound strikes. I think she goes out there and just is just like, all right, cool. Y'all want to disrespect me? Y'all don't want to give me ranked opponents like Tisha Torres? Y'all don't want to give me, I'm going out here, I'm taking everybody. Like, I feel like she's going to do that. And then, like, maybe she gets to a dominant position and Ashley just can't continue to defend from these strikes, and then it just ends that way. Or maybe she sinks in a submission. But I do think a finish is coming.
Yeah, I'm going with Angela Hill as well. I think she might get the finish as well. That Cadela fight was on the Overeem Harris card. I thought it was like a couple of bad decisions on that. Oh, it was the Ige versus Barboza card fight as well, wasn't it?
Oh.
That's why I got kind of confused. I knew there was a couple of bad decisions.
Yeah.
I think that was worse. But like, she's a very good fighter. Again, she's much better than a 12-9 record, like you say. I do think she'll get the finish as well. Next fight is a fantastic fight in the bantamweight division, which is one of my favorite divisions, in Jimmy Rivera versus Pedro Munoz. I think Jimmy Rivera will win. I'm quite impressed with him against Cody Stamen. I think he's a very dangerous opponent right now, and he beat Pedro Munoz previously when he was 25, when he was a lot younger, and now that he's grown even more, had a good fight with guys like Peter Yan. I just feel like he's getting better and better, and I feel like he will beat Munoz. Munoz arguably beat Frankie Edgar. A lot of people did think Munoz won that fight. He also got wins over, obviously, Cody Garbrandt as well. But I think Rivera will just win by maybe split decision. How do you see it going?
I do hold Cody Stamann in high regard, so definitely beating him is valuable in my perception. But I keep just thinking about I think about people. I like looking at people's losses and seeing how they fought in those losses, like when they were down in the cards or maybe they were hurt. And that's how I measure a lot of people. And Pedro Munoz, when he was fighting against Aljamain Sterling, he was losing. Aljamain was putting crazy pressure on him, was striking, was just outs. Like, I think Pedro Munoz is a lot better than people like give him credit for. Like the way that he lost to Aljamain Sterling and the fight that Aljamain brought to him, that was the best I've ever seen Aljamain Sterling. People want to talk about the Sandhagen fight. That's 30 seconds. It's hard to gauge how good he looked. But when you go toe to toe with someone for that amount of time and the output that he was putting on him and the strikes, and Pedro stood there in the pocket and was fighting him. He was trying to bring it to him. He just couldn't win. He couldn't outpace him. He couldn't outstrike him. I think Pedro is going to have some success against Jimmy Rivera, and I think Jimmy's best chance is to dive and try and wrestle. Because I think once Pedro starts landing his shots and combinations, he's going to start hurting Jimmy, and I think the rounds and the points are going to get away from him. I'm going to say 29-28, and I'm going to say Pedro.
Yeah, Pedro could definitely win this fight. I mean, I like the fact that both of these two have fought very good opposition, like in the UFC. I mean, Peter Yan for Rivera, Aljamain Sterling for both, Cody Garbrandt, like, these are like the who's who of the division, and this is like one of the best divisions in the UFC as well. How do you see like if these two doing in the top five, like whoever was to win, like how do you see them faring against the top five?
Not too well. Not too well. The top five of bantamweight is just, especially now, like if they would have had this fight a little bit while back and then they got into the top five and they were able to get some fights while they were in there, I'd be like, okay, great. You have gotten to the point where you are without having to fight certain people who are coming back. We got TJ Dillashaw coming back. We got Dominic Cruz coming back. Like, this was the absolute worst time for you to position yourself to be in the top five. The absolute worst. Because now you're not going to get a chance to fight for the title. And while you're waiting to fight for the title, there's people who have a stronger claim getting ready to re-enter the pool, and they're going to have to fight you to get their claim to the title, or you're going to have to fight them to prove that you deserve it. It's just like, no matter who wins this fight, they inevitably are going to lose in the end. So, no, hell no.
And also you got Henry Cejudo maybe coming back, but you never know what his situation is.
No, like you couldn't pick a worse time to be successful at bantamweight. This is the worst time ever for you.
Yeah, but it's also like a very, very good time for the bantamweight division just as a whole. I mean, like the main event in the next week, which I think we'll talk about for a bit after we get through this card. It's just amazing that they've been able on such a big card with Israel Adesanya, Megan Anderson, and Nunes, and then we got Peter Yan versus Sterling, which is arguably the main event of that card. Like, depends on which fight are you most excited for, on which kind of like, because some people don't like really the champ versus champ fight. Sometimes I feel like it's complete like overused, kind of like it's not got that special like effect on it anymore. Like, what kind of like your opinion on that?
I think this scenario, it's okay just because Israel, like, he gave himself some breathing room, taking out some tough opponents, taking out some tough challengers, and then with light heavyweight up in shambles right now because a lot of the top fighters either are coming off of losses or your champion just left. Like, this is like, I feel like this would be the perfect ideal time to do something like this versus it's like, all right, well, I'll give you an example. What if Dominic Reyes has beat John Jones and he's a fresh champion and he has no title defenses and Israel Adesanya is like, I want to fight the title, and John Jones is like, I'm going up to heavyweight. Then I'd be like, that's bogus because Dominic doesn't have any title defenses and there's challengers waiting to fight him who he hasn't fought. This scenario is different. I'm happy they did this. I'm going to watch it too. And I think a lot of people, hold on. I've been seeing this on Twitter. People are hating on Israel Adesanya because he's letting his dog lick him in the mouth. He's doing weird stuff, saying he's hitting fans and he doesn't like fans and all this other stuff. People just hating on him. Don't allow your hate to cloud you from the fact that Israel Adesanya is going to absolutely embarrass Yan. maybe not embarrass him, but don't. Israel is going to win this fight, y'all. And no matter how much you hate him, that's not going to change the fact. Same as how so many people hate Colby Covington. You can hate him all you want. He's going to beat Tyron Woodley. He's going to beat Robbie Lawler. Like, I don't know why. Nah, man. I'm picking Izzy.
I mean, it's kind of like, do you know, like all these fans out like Gilbert Burns, super fan. Now they're like Jan, super fan when it was Usman. And now it's Israel. Like, I feel like they just dislike a fighter so much, but they kind of like don't realize how good that fighter actually is. But I think Jan's very good. I think Izzy will win, but I think people can discredit him maybe because of his age. I'm thinking, well, he didn't beat John Jones. He beat John Reyes to win the title. But maybe he's not a real champion. But I think he's a very good fighter. But I mean, he did struggle against Jacare Souza, though. I mean, that kind of was a fight. That wasn't very good at all. But I'm looking forward to that card. I think that's one of the best cards. Like Don Cruz is on that card, I think, against everybody, against a guy that I've got a lot of like hate recently over his comments about Megan Anderson and Casey Kenny, which is a shame because I like a lot of people that say stuff about Casey Kenny. They all say how much of a good guy he is, and maybe if he just said that no, he wouldn't do anything with Anderson, and he didn't add that last comments on him, it might have been a bit better. I doubt she would have been as upset. That last comment was definitely not needed. What was your thought on it?
Dude, like, the problem with it is, like, I knew something like this was going to happen because I've been watching Sean O'Malley for a minute. So I knew what type of person he was and what type of people who gravitate towards him. As a fighter, no one can deny him. But I was just like, there's something just weird about him. And I was like, anybody who gravitates around that person is going to have similar ideals. And, like, that's how it goes, you know, birds of a feather. So I was not surprised by them saying some stuff like that. And it's unfortunate. But the thing about the MMA sphere is this, like, it's not how it was 2-3 years ago. Things are starting to get more and more progressive, and there's a lot of things that are coming back from the past that are retroactively going to punish a lot of people. Like there's some like people who have been around the sport for a while know it's only a matter of time until people find certain things. Like, so as far as Casey Kenny's like concern, is just like, you messed up, bro. You shouldn't have said that. Like, you can't say things like that, especially about a coworker, especially on a live podcast that reaches tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. Now it probably reaches millions of people because of what you said. But if we just objectively look at your fight, Dominic Cruz is gonna fuck you up, bro. Dominic Cruz is coming out there. And I'm a huge Dominic Cruz fan too, so maybe I'm being biased, but it's just like there's only a certain style of people that can beat Dominic Cruz, and Casey Kenny is not one of them.
Yeah, I think it was as much as it was stupid, it's kind of smart in terms of, I mean, it's a pay-per-view. He's fighting one of the biggest names in the bantamweight division in Dom Cruz. People are going to tune in now just to see him get beat up. I mean, that's kind of good to him because people are talking about him. Yeah. And also Winston's on that card, so it's kind of like he got that kind of narrative going as well. But on to this next fight of this card between Montano De La Rosa versus Mario Bueno Silva. I think Silva will win. I think she's the better prospect. De La Rosa took a bit of a beating in the last few fights. She's lost quite a few in a row now as well. I think I'm just going to go Bueno Silva by sub in round 2. How do you see it going?
I'm picking Montana, bro. I'm against you, bro. Myra, every time I watch this girl fight, like, even in her wins, I'm like, no. You look at her last, I think it was an armbar finish against Barella. I think it was Barella. That girl stood in her guard for about 3 straight minutes, not protected. She basically handed her arm away. She basically gave her arm away, and Myra took like 3 minutes to do it. I'm like, that's the last time I'm going Montana De La Rosa, and I think she wins this fight 30-26. No, that's just, she ain't winning no 30-26. She's winning this fight 29-28, maybe 30-27.
I mean, also, like, I don't know. I like more Barella because obviously I'm half Italian, she's Italian. But I mean, I don't know how she has a win over Tatiana Suarez. Like, no, not Tatiana Suarez. Talia Santos, sorry.
Exactly.
And that's just mad. But
That's a lie. I refuse to believe that. That's not real. I'm not accepting that.
I had Marcel on a couple of weeks ago, and she said that he was convinced it was her twin sister fighting and not Santos. So, and also I think Barella's been caught up in doing a lot of dodgy stuff, like with drug dealing and stuff. And it's a bad look on the Italian woman MMA because another fighter last week got done for drug dealing as well. So I was like, what's going on with Italian MMA here? Because like it's a sport that's not thriving at all with them. I mean, and when you have a bad publicity of two fighters drug dealing, I mean, it's not going to be a good promotion to try and promote that sport in Italy, which obviously I want to happen because I'm a massive fan of Italian MMA and MMA as a whole. But I do think Silva will win. I know what you mean about that fight. Barella is not very good, but I just feel like De La Rosa's just lost too many now. But the thing is, when you're fighting for your career, that's when you're kind of like the most dangerous fighter that brings it out. So she could go and win. I mean, women's MMA is really unpredictable. I mean, everybody you think should win doesn't. So it's kind of like she could definitely go out and get the win. The co-main event is a very good co-main event between Nikita Krylov and Magomed Ankalaev. I'm very high on Ankalaev. I know he beat Kutaleba, which was quite a big prospect twice. There was a lot of controversy in that first fight, but I said this and I'll probably say it again. If you're pretending to act like a fool and pretending to rock around hurt, like, what's the referee going to think of that? Like, what did you think of that first fight with the Kutaleba, and what do you think he was thinking?
I think that was the worst stoppage ever. That referee should never be allowed to work it. That was terrible. People got to stop. Okay, when we watch that fight, we're watching from the camera's perspective, not from the referee. The referee's in there with them. And even from our perspective, I saw all those shots missing. All these follow-up shots after Kutalaba got rocked were missing. So the ref has an even better view, and he sees these strikes missing. He's still like, fight's over. It's like, bro, you should never be allowed to work again for that. That is disgraceful, distasteful. Like, Granted, I wanted I wanted Ankalaev to win, and I believed that he was a superior fighter. Either way, I thought he was going to win no matter what, but just no, you can't. No, he was acting like that was the first ever fight he ever refereed. Like, that was a terrible stoppage, and I still think, obviously, I'm picking Ankalaev over Krylov, but about that stoppage, that is just the worst thing. People always want to hold Herb Dean to the fire for his bad stoppages. Why are people not still talking about that? That in all mixed martial arts, no matter what organization you've seen, that might have been the worst stoppage ever. Like, I'm not over exaggerating. That might have been the worst one.
Do you not think, though, it's a bit of Kotaleba's fault, though, why it got stopped?
No, that is literally the referee's job to make the right decision. No, I can fight however I want to fight if I'm not breaking the rules. And that's not against the rules. Do your job.
Fair enough. And then at least we had that second fight to have some closure on that fight where Ankalaev finally gets the job done more cleaner anyway. And we find a guy in Krylov who had the first one in the UFC, then did very well back at home in Russia and Ukraine, and then he's got called back. Has a very good record, 27-7, and I don't think he's that old either. I think he's only like 28. I think. I mean, he might be a bit older than that, but he's a vet. He's only he's 28.
Yeah, you're right.
And with 27-7, you'd think he'd be a bit older with the vet. So he's much of a veteran. I think it's the more experienced guy Ankalaev's ever fought. But I'm going with Ankalaev. I'm very high on him. I think he gets the job done by TKO. How do you see it going?
I'm picking Ankalaev because he has a lot more weapons that are a lot more polished. I guess the best way for me to give an example of what I mean by that would be like, You look at the Connor that was taking over the featherweight division. He had so many weapons, and he showed us all these weapons and tools and strikes that he had that were so polished. But after a while of him just not using them, like we just were unaware, well, not we, but a lot of people just didn't know. I think Ankalev is one of those guys who just has so many different tools that he's always working on. It's just like, well, here's the opportunity time to use it now. And then he just throws out there. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen. I think we're going to see just a random front kick to the face or something that's just like we haven't seen him utilize. And I think that Nikita Krylov is, I remember when they were first talking about him on Axis TV Fights. This was like a YouTube channel, Robin Black and all those guys a few years back. And this was when he first made his UFC debut. And there was so much hype around him, and he didn't fare too well. And he just didn't live up to the hype. But I always acknowledge that he had the ability. It's unfortunate that he's fighting this fight. I don't give him a high chance in this one. I don't.
And also, I mean, that Paul Craig loss, that whatever people think about that, it's not really a bad loss now. I mean, look at what Paul Craig's gone and done. I mean, he's fighting Jamal Hill next. He's ranked fighting Jamal Hill next. I mean, Paul Craig's a very good fighter. I think probably they were to rematch. I mean, if Craig does get past Hill, I mean, the natural progression might be Ankalev versus Craig again. Do you see that fight panning out kind of the same way without Craig getting the submission?
Yeah, Craig didn't show me anything other than that finish. I didn't see anything in that fight that would let me believe that he could beat him again. I think Ankalev, in fact, might even finish him in the second fight. But that's what happens in MMA. Like sometimes you find yourself in a position you think you're safe and you're just not, and it goes down like that. So yeah, I still would not pick Paul Craig in the second time. No.
And also, I mean, this division's starting to get quite interesting. I mean, especially for European fans. I mean, it's a very European-heavy division, maybe outside of the top three, maybe. I mean, you got like guys like Yuri Prochaska, Lokin Ozdemir, Rakic, who might be one of the best prospects coming from Europe right now. And then you got obviously Krylov and Krylov. Who do you see kind of being like the next light heavyweight to kind of be the next John Jones out of that crop of fighters?
I have two in my head right now, but it's gonna hurt my heart to say this. I think Jiri, but in order for him to become that guy, he has to be Dominic Reyes, and I'm a Dominic Reyes fan. So I'm hoping he loses here, but then comes back. Why do I keep hearing, is Jimmy Crute a light heavyweight?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I don't know why I was just thinking that I like Jimmy Crute a lot. I like the way he fights. I like I'm picking Jimmy Crute. I think Jimmy Crute is a very, very, very strong prospect in this division, and he's had the setbacks that he needed earlier on when he got submitted with that crazy submission, and he's fought some. So I'm thinking Jiri, and I'm thinking Crute definitely. More so Crute though.
I think Crute is definitely the safer out of the two, because I think people are forgetting that Yuri got tagged very badly against Volkan. I mean, He's wild. He's really wild. He's got power, yes, but I mean, his technique is not the best. And Don Reyes could easily go out there and KO him if he goes from fights like that. So I feel like Crute is definitely the fighter, the smarter fighter, and Crute is also the guy, like I said, is up learning. He's had his losses kind of at young. He's young now, so it's a very exciting division. In a division where a couple of years ago, you just had John Jones and DC. So it's very exciting times. And on to the main event, which I'm looking forward to because I'm very high on one of these guys in Jairzinho Rozenstruik and Cyril Gane. I think I'm going to go with Cyril Gane just by decision, because I saw Stolovering dominate Jairzinho Rozenstruik for 24 minutes at kickboxing. Cyril Gane's got a very good kickboxing base, and he's also a guy that who gets his takedowns. He's got submissions as well. So, I mean, he can wrestle as well. I think people sometimes forget about that. And I think he might be one of the best technical strikers, because I feel like his technique is very clean. But he did get tagged a bit against Tanner Boza, which is a bit of a worry. I don't think he got rocked hard, but he did get hit quite a lot. I mean, and if Jairzinho lands on you, it could be lights out. But I don't really see any way, if Cyril Gane uses his distance where Rozenstruik can get near him with that big shot, How do you see it?
The funny thing is like this is one of those fights where like I feel like most fans like of our caliber and like up there are gonna default to Gane or Gane, however people pronounce it. And I feel like me picking against him right now is like people thinking he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. But I promise y'all, I do. I'm picking Jairzinho simply because he's proven to have durability. He's proven to be able to go 5 rounds. He's proven to be able to take damage and accumulate that damage upon himself and withstand it and deliver it for 5 straight rounds against arguably one of the most decorated heavyweight fighters of all time. Like, people want to say what they want to say about Alistair Overeem, about his chin, but still, Alistair was landing on him too, though. And Alistair has power. Alistair can hurt you. So he took all those shots. So I don't have enough knowledge on Gane's performances, based off of his performances, for me to say, you know what? He can go 25 minutes in an MMA bout against someone who we've seen can do that and take damage and deliver it back. I wonder how well Gane does when he starts to get hit back and he starts to get tired and it starts to wear on him and he's the main event and all these things. Like, there's a lot of things that I'm picking Rozenstruik, and I don't know if he finishes him. It might be like a bloody war for like 5 rounds, and then maybe like you have like one judge to think, nah, I'm not gonna guess a split decision. That's stupid as fuck. I'm picking a unanimous decision, and I think that Jairzinho wins maybe 48, 47, 49, 46 range.
Obviously, we both got wins over JDS. Like, who do you think won more impressively out of the two?
Gane definitely won more impressively, but there's years and there's difference in time period of when they fought him too. Like, you look back, you see Derek Lewis fought JDS, and JDS TK'd him in like the 2nd round or something like that. It was like the 2nd or 3rd round. But it was like, all right, there's a lot of factors though too. Like, we don't know Gane had a better performance, but I'm not basing it off of that. I refuse to, especially with JDS being the age that he is. Like, we don't know.
And also, like, I think there was only like 4 months in between the Jairzinho fight and the Gane fight. But I mean, should he come back that quickly after losing to Rozenstruik? Like, you don't know.
Exactly.
But I think this is a very good fight. I think heavyweight's got a lot of shine recently. Obviously, I mean, we had 3 fights on the main card, 1 main event last week, and we have Stipe versus Ngannou headlining the pay-per-view later this month. And we got them headlining this event. Now, do you feel like this division now is starting to get a lot more excited than it might have done within the last few months recently?
In the last few months, yes, certainly, but it'll never be that era. This division will never be the era that it once was and have the hype that it once was when you had Kane, JDS, when you had this division will never reach to that point ever again, especially now that we're going to get to a point where we're going to have a dominant champion one way or another, whether it's Stipe, whether it's John, whether it's one of them is going to be a dominant champion, and then it's just going to set the division back again. Like, so we will never ever have it as hype as the other divisions now. You said your favorite division is bantamweight, correct?
One of them, yeah.
One of them? Okay, what would you say is your favorite division?
Featherweight, I think.
Yeah. Okay. You are real. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Good. Featherweight is my favorite division. I think it's the most stacked division, and the reason why is because there are people outside of the top 15 that I think that can make it into the top 10 and the top 5 and compete for world titles. There's not too many divisions that have that type of versatility. People want to talk about 155 being the top division, but it's like outside of the top 10, we know who can compete for a title. We know who can break into the top 5, and there aren't that many fighters, especially outside of the top 15. We know there are not many fighters outside the top 15 that can make it into the top 5 and even compete for world titles. So that's why I'm saying heavyweight is even worse than that. They don't even have people outside the top 10 who can crack that. And that's the problem. That's ultimately the problem. You don't have Mark Hunt in his prime revitalizing his career. You don't have like all these guys like Crow Cop. You don't have those guys anymore who come from Dream and other. It's done. It's done for you. But your time to shine is over. People used to love y'all, but guess what? The more talented divisions are starting to get the shine that they deserve, not just the bigger fighters. Let's go.
I mean, also, like, I've come to the sport fairly new, but I mean, like, I've always been somebody that said that I wouldn't care if the heavyweight division got scrapped. I mean, because I used to be like I used to be like a massive boxing fan, and I watched the heavyweights, and I'm like this is unless there's a KO, this is just so boring. I used to always watch like minimum weight fights. Like I've always been a fan of those lower divisions. Like, because I just don't think the quality there, unless you're in the top. Like you obviously got Stipe, you got your Ngannou's, but even Ngannou's not really that great technically. I mean, like he's quite wild. I think Gane's very good technically.
Yeah.
Gazinho is wild as well. So it's like there's Tom Aspinall's good technically, whether it's against that opposition or not, he's still very good technically. He's trained with Tyson Fury, so you expect him to be good technically. But compared to like the bantamweight division, the featherweight division, bantamweight division is a lot like the featherweight, like you said, in my opinion, in terms of there's guys inside that top 30 that could easily get into that top 15, top 5 range and beat those guys. Like you've got the Barceloses. I mean, and you also got the fringe guys like Nathaniel Wood, who could on any day maybe beat a guy like Kidong Song. Like you never know. He's still a very good fighter. And obviously the featherweights, you have Gavin Tucker, you have Lerone Murphy, who I'm very high on. You have a bunch of other fighters. You still got Cub Swanson, who's outside the rankings, who's still getting big wins. And also like the lightweight division, also you've got like Sarukian, you've got your Riddles, you've got your Fizievs, who I think could battle for world titles. I think, especially with Fiziev and Sarukian. But like with the heavyweight, there's like you say, there's not many guys you can think of outside those rankings. Maybe a Romanov could get in that top 10 just because he's a wrestler and he gets a lot of good submissions. But is there any fights that you're really looking forward to in the next couple of weeks?
That are up and coming. Yeah, let me tell you about my wife right now. Macy Chasson versus Marion Renault. This one, she was supposed to fight like, I don't know, like February 6th, but the fight got pushed back because Marion had COVID, then it got pushed back again because I think something happened with Marion again, and then finally Macy got hurt too. So it's just like, people need to understand, like, there are so many talented fighters, but also, and we like to talk about skill set, like, oh, look at this powerful wrestling. Oh, look at these beautiful strikes. There's something about a fighter who has the ability to smell the finish and get it every single time. That's something you cannot account for when you're dealing with a fighter. Like certain people will get you hurt and then they'll be like, oh, he's hurt, but then they didn't capitalize on it and they still skate to a victory. But it's something special about a fighter who can inflict damage upon you, see where you're vulnerable, and then finish the fight as a result. You see it in guys like Brian Ortega. You see it in guys like Charles Oliveira. You see it in like so many great fighters. And like Macy is one of those fighters who I'm like, bro, she finishes people. And it's brutal. She will find a way to finish you. And she's like, y'all gonna see. That's all I gotta say. Y'all gonna see. I feel like that's one of the biggest fights that I want to see right now because it's just gonna further prove my point about fighters and this new era. Like,
and also, I mean, I think that fight was just scheduled for this week's card as well, and then it got moved again.
Yeah.
The only thing with Chasen I'm a bit worried about is that loss to Lena Landsberg. That's like the kind of thing maybe you should be getting past that kind of opposition right now if you're going to be that next big thing. Didn't she go into the Ultimate Fighter as like a featherweight, and then she moved back down? Do you reckon she could do that at featherweight?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that the issue was this: I think her and a lot of those women who were on that show made the right decision. You look at that division right now, there are 3 fighters in that division. If you want to get better and improve as a fighter, why the hell would I sit in a division with 4 other people and we just do round robin with who fights who? Why not move down and have an opportunity to fight 30 other people simultaneously because at the end of the day, she entered that show with like 3 or 4 professional fights. Like that, and she immediately won the show and then got into the UFC. You're basically a baby in comparison to every other person who had gotten to 14 fights, gotten to 10 fights, gotten to twice the experience. So when they handed her Lena Landsberg, it was kind of unjustifiable. Yes, she was finishing opponents up until that point. She was on like a 3-fight finishing streak in the UFC, but it was like Lena Landsberg has close to 40 professional fights. Not 40, like has like 30 professional fights inside of MMA and outside of MMA. And it was in Copenhagen. And like Like she was talking about like dealing with like crazy like strain on the body and not giving her time. So there's so many factors into that. And she won the first round easily. And then second round was competitive, and the third round Lena just separated. It wasn't like she got dominated or finished. It was like 28-29. So as far as like her beating certain opponents, I bet you if she fought again, she would mollywop her. But she's also young in the sport compared to people. So that's how I'm rating it too. You have to look through the lens of, all right, you're young and they have the experience on your side, but you're still finishing these people who are said to have more experience and been around for years on you. So that's why I'm not worried. Like, she gets better and better every single time. Like, you gonna see, bro. Keep doubting. Keep doubting. I'm gonna hit you up when she wins her next. I'm like, this man didn't believe. I got you, bro. Keep doubting.
And also, I mean, it's very interesting that you also mentioned all these like things like the strange on her body she had. Like, we can do what I just did then and just mention about the loss of Landsberg, and then you kind of like put me in my place. But I do agree. I think she is very good. I think she will be Renault as well. A couple of questions before you go, because I'm very aware that you're recording very soon on another video. What are your opinions on Edwards versus Bilal Muhammad? Because obviously that's a fight that was meant to be Shimia versus Edwards. Edward needed a fight, and Muhammad stepped up. What's your thoughts on that fight?
Bilal Muhammad, first of all, props to him for taking that fight. Like, that's a G thing to do. He's very durable too. Like, he fought Jeff Neal and went to a decision with Jeff. So he can take damage. He can take bombs and he can keep going. So I don't think Leon Edwards is necessarily gonna finish this guy. But I do think that Leon, because he's been out for so long, people are expecting him to just be some scrub. And it's like, no, this dude has been in the gym actively training for people, but the fights just haven't lined up for him. He's going to come through this and he's going to be sharp. He's going to be probably better than what people remember because of the time that we haven't seen him since his last fight. So I think this is a recipe for disaster for Bilal Muhammad. And this, I was joking around earlier about, 30-26, 32. This might legitimately be, is this a main event?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. This might legitimately be a 50-44. This might be 50-45 territory. Like, legit, Bilal might not win a round.
And also, like, people saying that Edwards would be rusty, but I mean, he's still been in camp for a while. I mean, he was in camp all year pretty much last year. I mean, look, he had to fight Woodley in March, and like people saying he should be cut, but I mean, literally none of the reasons why that fight is being cancelled is his fault. Like, you had the pandemic in March, and they have to move the show to Cage Warriors and have some of their fighters fight on the Cage Warriors show. And then Woodley got rescheduled for May. And over here in the UK, you literally couldn't fly over to America at that point. So he was hampered. And then you had the Chimia fight. I think Edwards had COVID first. And then he rescheduled that again in December. And then Chimia had COVID. So, I mean, like, he's literally been training all year. Like, I'm none of it's his fault. I do think Edwards will win as well. Do you think if he wins, do you think he gets that title shot?
I think he deserves to get a crack at the title if he wins this one, just because now his win streak is active again. But I don't think they're going to give it to him. I think that's the difference. I think he should be given a title shot, but I don't necessarily think they're going to give it to him because he beat Bilal. They're going to try and like spin it. That's what the UFC is doing. They're trying everything in their possible power to control who's entering the revolving door of the title shots. Like, how the hell is Jorge Masvidal in talks for another title fight? Last time I checked, he lost 50-45. Last time I checked, he had next to zero success from that fight. But Josh still want to bring him back and say, oh, well, he didn't have enough time to train. He was already training for that fight. He had already been in camp for months training. He had brought in wrestlers. You saw his Instagram. This dude was actively training to fight Kamaru Usman, and that was still the result. So as far as I'm concerned, the UFC is going to try and probably do the Ultimate Fighter and throw in like that. I think that was the better way for Leon to take this, was to go on the Ultimate Fighter and deal with Jorge, and then the winner got a shot at the title. But yeah, as much as I want him to get a title with a win over Bilal Muhammad, I don't think they're going to give it to him. No, I don't think so. He deserves it though, but I don't think it happens.
I just feel like it's ridiculously hard because, I mean, like, it would be on a 9-fight win streak, and actually the last person to beat him, I think, was Kamaru Usman. I mean, you got that story there. It's written already. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Kobe, but what Kobe said, like pretty much what you said just then about the Jorge and Usman fight, he basically said, literally Dustin Poirier said that you were training for that fight. Said stop making this excuse, and he didn't really seem that much in gimmick either. He kind of seemed like him kind of himself. Like he didn't seem like, oh, you're wuss and whatever. Like he just basically said stop making excuses. Let's fight, and that's basically what he said. And he's 100% correct on that. I feel like Masvidal and Colby at Ultimate Fighter is much better than Usman and Masvidal just because of. I feel like now there's more. It's just such a good story there between Colby and Masvidal. Like they were friends, and then did Masvidal get Colby kicked out of his gym and make him move to MMA Masters because for being too vocal or something?
No, Colby got Colby kicked out of the gym. Everything Colby did is his fault. If the people can try to spin Masvidal, didn't like if he had the power. No, Colby shouldn't have been saying the things that he was saying about Dustin when he was training to fight Khabib. He should have been saying things he said about it. Like he did that to himself. They told him to stop doing that stuff. They told him to stop talking about who was the gym owner who passed away. He was just like, bro, what are you doing, bro? This ain't you. We see you in the gym yucking it up with the boys, not acting like this. You can't do that. He did it to himself. He got what he deserved. And you know what? Fuck Colby.
Do you think Colby's persona is actually him? Because I mean, there's been a couple of videos where he's talked to a fan and he's given him like really good like advice. Like he's not being a stupid gimmick. Like what do you think is actually Colby? That one or the one that we're seeing now?
The Colby that we saw before he went to Brazil is the real Colby. That man, people said there's this rumor that has been circulating for years now saying that no matter how Colby won, no matter the result of who he fought, I forget who he fought in Brazil a little while back. Was it Damian Maia?
I think it was Maia, yeah.
Yeah, they were saying that no matter if he won or lost, he was getting cut after that fight, which I don't necessarily believe because he was on a winning streak, so how could that be possible? But they were saying that was what was said to him. So after he won the fight, he got on the mic and started talking so much trash, and the UFC just was like, all right, I guess we got to keep you now. I don't think that happened at all. But I do think that he was realizing I got to better position myself in this division to make people know who I am as a result, and what a better way. So to answer your question, no, this is not the real Colby that he's showing us. And two, it's too late though. It's too late. He has to save this guy forever now, unfortunately. You can't be like, all right, guys, I was lying. Let me put on a Joe Biden cap now and rock all blue now. Let me not buy prostitutes. Let me just like, it's done. You gotta be this guy forever now.
I mean, he put a tweet out saying Trump 2024. So I think he knows that now, but
you got to.
Thank you very much for coming on and agreeing to do that. It's been very fun talking to you. Is there anything you want to plug before you go?
Listen, man, I'm doing stuff on TikTok. I'm doing stuff on Twitter. You can check me out there, Kairos for both of them. Thank you so much for the opportunity, but that's all I got.
Thank you very much, and we'll speak again soon.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you.